Hey guys, welcome back to Human Condition. This video is another video in our biology series. I decided to do something a little different for you guys today. This one is not brain chemicals, but actually brain regions. I thought this would be a nice switch up from what we usually do and figure out what brain regions are and how they affect our personalities and how we act. Starting off with the top dog itself, the frontal lobe, the lobe that kind of controls all the other lobes. And we'll talk about the 4 specific regions of the frontal lobe in this video. We got the four topics would be the prefrontal cortex, the motor cortex, the premotor cortex, and the inferior frontal gyrus or gyrus. So yeah, those are the 4 main parts of the frontal lobe that we'll talk about today. So yeah, the prefrontal cortex is the main one to do this. The prefrontal cortex is the one that is responsible for self-control, rational thinking, and higher executive functions of the brain. So the prefrontal cortex has a lot to do with our personalities, our rational thoughts, and anything basically planning. And when you think of the brain, the prefrontal cortex is basically the top dog in regards to controlling our emotions, our actions, and our thinking, which is pretty cool. Another thing I didn't know about this is that when I was researching it is that the prefrontal cortex develops by the age of 25. So by then, this can explain why a lot of times by the age of 25, most personality traits can still change in the future, but most personality traits are solidified by the age of 25. Also, another interesting, cool thing about the prefrontal cortex when it develops is that if you have anxiety or ADD or ADHD before the age of 25, potentially symptoms can reduce once you hit 25 and the prefrontal cortex matures completely because it's responsible for attention and thinking. So it can help with anxiety and ADHD if once by the age of 25 and helps reduce symptoms of this. So if you're under the age of 25 and you have these anxiety or ADHD, let's go. You might feel a little bit better, hopefully, by the age of 25 once the prefrontal cortex is fully developed. The second main key point of this talk about this video is the motor cortex. The motor cortex is kind of like what it sounds like. It's responsible for how we move and why we move the way we do. So whereas the prefrontal cortex is more of a conscious thing, it's our conscious thoughts and sometimes subconscious. The motor cortex is more subconscious thoughts. Like the cortex is moving, the brain helping your body move, where the premotor cortex is actually thinking about how we're going to move and when we move, and that's also more of a subconscious brain activity, which I thought was pretty interesting. And finally, the last region we'll talk about is the inferior frontal gyrus or gyrus brain region of the frontal lobe. And this one is responsible for memory recognition, memory storage, helps with memory storage, language comprehension, and social regulation. So yeah, it helps with comprehending languages, memory, and social regulation, which is also pretty interesting. It helps with the prefrontal cortex with that. But there's also other lobes that we'll talk about in the future that also help with those. So yeah, this was what is the frontal lobe and how do we control ourselves. Basically, the frontal lobe is the leader of the lobes of the brain region, and it kind of helps control the other ones in a way, but they also interact. The prefrontal cortex helps us manage our decisions, actions, and it's basically the conscious mind because it helps with rational thoughts. It works with the limbic system that controls our emotions. The motor cortex is the one that helps us move and function. The premotor cortex helps us think about where we're going to move and why we're moving. And the inferior frontal gyrus helps with not a ton, with memory, social regulation, and language comprehension. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Also, sorry this video is a little shorter than usual. I'm just not as well versed as in the brain regions as I am the brain chemicals, but I try my best to figure them out. But honestly, each region I talked about today could be its own separate video. So in the future, I might just do the prefrontal cortex and all these regions in their own separate videos. Yeah, as always, thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe if you want. I love you guys, and see you in the next one.